What's going on, everybody? Happy NFL draft week, and my goodness, is it accordingly a great day to be great. We're going through Thor's tight end rankings, some big time rumors that are again potentially going to be going through, major first round moments here coming up. All that and much, much more on today's Fantasy Life show. Of course, though, joining myself, Ian Hartitz, we have the wonderful Dwain, the Rock McFarland, and Thor Nystrom. I believe it's somehow our first show with us three together. At least it has been in quite some time. So, Thor, welcome. You recently posted your top 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 players, Thor. What is wrong with you, man? And I mean that in a very, good, respectful way.
Yeah, during the UDFA free-for-all on Saturday night, what I call the dessert draft, people need a resource. Know, how are their team's UDFAs ranked and viewed, and then comps on those guys. So we got to go deep.
Dwain, maybe don't quite have 500 people in the supermodels, but I know that hasn't stopped you from grinding, for the better part of the last 2 or 3 months. And, haven't seen your My Guy list yet, but I'm pretty sure, a certain Bowling Green tight end will be at the top of it.
Yes, he will be. And I know we're going to talk about this guy in the show today. So we'll see where Thor stands on him. Where does he land in that list of 500? But I do have to give a massive hat tip to Thor on the 500, because that's definitely look, with the supermodel, I'm just running all the data, and I'm not doing the, non-running back wide receivers and tight ends. But mad respect for a list that has 500 on it.
And, when you have 500 players that you're comping, to also 500 players, that's the way it works. It could be easy to just say some of the bigger names. And I feel like every time we hear draft comps, it ends up being guys selected in the last few years. Not you, Thor. We had Deuce McAllister, Jeremy Shockey, Righty Tebow. Again, so much more, and invite you guys to check those out over at fantasylife.com. But accordingly, going to be breaking down Thor's top 5 tight ends today, as well as a couple sleepers to perhaps find at the end of the draft. Kicking things off with that Jeremy Shockey comp himself. It is Thor's tight end 1, Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, your 4th overall player, Thor. So regularly seen him being mocked as high as, I believe number 7 to the New York Jets. Overall thoughts on Warren and what he can bring at the next level?
Yeah, he's a offensive weapon, I think would be the best way to say it. We got Brock Bowers in the last class. Tyler Warren's essentially Brock Bowers with 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier. It's a similar utility as far as advancing the ball. The manufactured touches that he got was similar to what Georgia did with Brock Bowers, stuff running the ball, end around, stuff like that. With Tyler Warren, you even got a little bit more. Tyler Warren, a kid who went into college as a huge left-handed dual threat quarterback, is how he arrived on campus. Obviously, he converted to tight end, but you get trick play utility with him. As the Wildcat quarterback, he is tremendous, especially short yardage around the goal line, stuff like that. But you can also throw the ball with him, which is something cool. They did the trick play as well with him, where he was the center and everyone was lined up to his right, and then he was an eligible receiver. Against USC, Tyler Warren did the shotgun snap and then ran a 9 route down the field, mossed somebody in the end zone for a touchdown. So you get all these different facets with him down the field, intermediate and then deep. That's where he reminds me of Jeremy Shockey, the receiver there. But then the stuff around the line of scrimmage, that more evokes a bigger Brock Bowers. This guy's going to be a fantasy stud immediately. Colston Loveland, that depends, we'll get to him in a second, but his fantasy viability initially, it's going to be heavily dependent on the landing spot. It's not with Tyler Warren. It don't matter. It's the same thing as with Brock Bowers last year. You manufacture touches for that guy, and he's going to be picked high, and it's going to be by a team that intends to manufacture Tyler Warren those touches from day one.
Yeah, that's the one question I have for you, Thor, is if that is a concern. Just because, with Brock Bowers, at least we saw it super early at Georgia. So this is a guy that did it from, his first days at Georgia. Brock Bowers was on the field. Tyler Warren, had he been drafted a year ago, man, he might have been a 3rd or a 4th round. I don't even know where he would have gone.
Lower. I think he would have been
lower. So that's what I'm saying.
Pick.
A guy that had done nothing. And I get it. Theo Johnson played there. Pat Freiermuth played there. Brenton Strange. All these guys are NFL draft picks, but none of them were elite producers in college. So if Tyler Warren was really just this awesome all along, that's my one question with him. The supermodel also loves him with draft capital in it. He's the 5th best prospect ever in the model going back to 2018. Lance Zierlein also loves him. Gave him a film grade in the supermodel. Everything's between 50 and 100. So once you convert Lance Zierlein's film grade over to the supermodel, it's a 90. that's one spot ahead of Brock Bowers. So like he seems to be seeing the same things as you, but it is a little bit of a concern for me. I agree. It really does need to be a team that we feel like they're going to immediately use him and design things. Here's the problem. When you get to the NFL, quite often you have other teammates that are also good that your team wants to design stuff for. At Penn State in that last year, man, they really didn't have anything else. So as much as the model likes him, I will say the non-draft capital version of the supermodel has him 24 spots lower in the all-time rank since 2018. So it's kind of saying there's a concern there, but I want to get your thoughts on that. I get it. I get all the design stuff, but man, at the NFL, most teams have other playmakers they have to get involved.
Yeah, the context on this, James Franklin, the Penn State coach, prior to last year, he was kind of known as the offensive coordinator killer. They had real issues there and the push and pull. And last year, because of Tyler Warren in large part, Andy Kotelnick could be the new offensive coordinator who built stuff around him. But Penn State's offense made a huge leap forward because of that and largely because of Tyler Warren. You mentioned the year before you had Theo Johnson on the team, 12 personnel offense, totally vanilla passing offense on that team. They had the two good running backs, but it was just keep the ball on the ground. They didn't throw down. Even Theo Johnson, he had a good athletic profile. They never threw him the ball down the field. Just a very, very vanilla type thing. You bring in Kotelnick, you have a competent offensive coordinator finally, and one that Franklin trusted enough to, okay, you do your thing. Kotelnick, he designed the whole offense around Tyler Warren, and that's what was similar to the Brock Bowers thing. One other thing I'll say contextually as far as the late breakup for Tyler Warren, as you guys know, tight end, you go to a new level, whether that's high school to college, whether that's college to the NFL, tight end is known, as you guys know, to be one of the slowest developing positions. You exist between the offensive line and the skills, right? Like you sort of exist in the middle of it, and you have to learn how to do both those things, blocking, the receiving, all that sort of stuff, and then from various alignments on the field. So slower developing position. Like I said, when Tyler Warren got to Penn State, it was as the dual threat quarterback. They converted him to tight end there, but they had to build him up from the ground level up with tight end. So that as well is the bad offenses, the lack of imagination, and then the development, I think explains the late breakout for Tyler Warren.
Still love that Greg Olson quote from a few years ago, basically saying that one play tight end's got to be, doing what their $20 million per year tackle does. Next play they're catching passes like the $20 million receiver. And yet here they are sitting there making only 12 or 15 themselves. So again, I beg you, Colston Loveland's, Kyle Pitts of the world, just declare as a wide receiver. Might make you a few more bucks there in a couple of years. But speaking of Mr. Colston Loveland, that is Thor's tight end too. Again, going a bit at odds here against Dwain's supermodel, where Loveland, again, without draft capital especially, would be the runaway tight end one. So still awfully high on Loveland yourself, Thor. He is your 20th player overall. Also love the Mark Andrews comp because, again, if you are just looking for a tight end in this class who can really help just be arguably the number one pass game weapon, period, regardless of position, sure seems like Loveland is that guy.
Yeah, and he's, again, more context specific because what he's doing, it's very specific. You're going to be the big slot in a 12 personnel offense, just like he was at Michigan. You need the A.J. Barner next to him, as it were, on the 2023 Michigan team, the inline blocking tight end. Not going to do much receiving to free Colston Loveland to do his thing. Primarily going to line up for you in the slot. You can also line him up on the boundary. You can do a little bit on the inline, but he's going to get ragdolled by power at the NFL level. But Colston Loveland, it's a receiver. He has a bit of a finesse type game with that. He can take care of the blocking in space, but the receiving utility is the reason that you're drafting him. A guy that can win at all three levels of the field, regardless of where he is deployed. He can run a full wide receiver's complement of routes, a full wide receiver route tree. Love his ball skills. He's very sudden, so he creates separation, but he has an enormous catch radius, a rangy guy with long arms. You put the ball anywhere around there, he can certainly spear it outside of his frame. It's Colston Loveland, a very, very skilled receiver, but it's going to require him to get in initially into the situation, that sort of a situation. 12 personnel offense, the big slot in that, and we'll see that there's some contextual things that could affect his year one production that I don't think are in play with Tyler Warren, but I still really like Colston Loveland as a prospect.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm the opposite here. I think Colston Loveland is less dependent on his lane spot. I do agree with Thor that like sometimes early in the career, these guys do get stuck in 12 personnel or they're asked to play the power slot. So I mean, that could be a thing year one, but I actually think that Colston Loveland is a guy that's shown that he can attack all levels of the field to a greater extent than Tyler Warren. Showed it much earlier, did it at a big program in Michigan. And then I think the other component here is we've said this about other players, and really, I mean, Colston Loveland played inline 42% of the time. Brock Bowers was 36% of the time the year before. PFF run block grade for Brock Bowers was a 71. Loveland not that far behind him. So, I mean, he's not like a great run blocker, but I've also seen Nate Tice put out film saying, hey, he actually thinks Colston Loveland might be as good or better than Tyler Warren as a run blocker. So I don't know. I get a little worried with some of our run blocking stuff because also we don't know like how much the teams in college cared about it, how much they really wanted them to focus on it. I'm not saying it's like something we just totally throw in the trash, but we heard similar things about Sam Laporta not being able to play inline and be able to handle those inline blocking duties. And look, he did it right away in year one. To Thor's point, there have been other guys. Like I think Trey McBride's a great example of a guy that was probably ready to be a receiver right away in the pros, but not ready to do those other things Thor's talking about. So I could see it going really either way, but I do feel like long-term, Colston Loveland has shown more that his game could be more applicable to multiple things versus Tyler Warren really needs to be somewhere where they want to scheme him up those touches, or he's going to have to grow into that next level of his game. Not saying that's impossible. Like the dude looks awesome with the ball in his hands. I would want to get it to him, but I slightly lean to Loveland probably being the less dependent of the two and just the way I look at it.
At least for 2025, because look, I get it. You're a great player. You can make the most out of a porous landing spot over the course of a 3-5+ year NFL career and everything. But just for this year, Thor, I mean, what is the good landing spot that we should be hoping for with these guys? Because I've seen Tyler Warren and Loveland himself being mocked to the Colts at 14. That seems horrible. We can talk about the quarterbacks, all the wide receivers you got going on there. I mean, I get it. They need a tight end, but we're not loving that. Similar sentiment with the Jets, who again have been linked to Warren early on. You're dealing with Justin Fields now. You got Garrett Wilson being a target hog. I mean, look, I would love for both these guys to go be the feature guy for the Chargers because it seems like that really is the one spot we can get behind. But Thor, do you think that, again, just in terms of 2025 production only, maybe we're overrating these guys a bit?
I was going to, for Loveland, of course I was going to say the Chargers, right? His college coach and Jim Harbaugh, and they run that offense where you have the inline blocking guy to free Colston Loveland to be your receiver out there. For Warren, Warren, I don't think, like I say, I don't think it matters a ton. Although there are a couple really interesting ones that are sort of off the beaten path. And the big one for me that I've been hearing is the 49ers. And will the 49ers make a swing with their extra picks to go up? A team that plays positionless football, Warren can absolutely be on the field with Kittle at the same time. It's the way that they play football. And then, of course, he would be the long-term, guy there. But he would still be a starter year one in that offense, in that positionless offense that they do. I think that could be an interesting one. But I think Warren's going to be.
But Thor, you would be worried about him in fantasy, though, right? In year one with George Kittle. I get they play positionless football, but there's no way he would be even. I don't think he would even sniff like a 50% route participation in that offense. Like he's not going to play receiver all the time. I mean, and Kyle Juszczyk is really good at what he does. So like I could get it. Maybe you want to play him some H-back, put him in 12 personnel. But I feel like that would be a major challenge for year one fantasy. Now, long term, I think, yes, I would love the fit because Kyle Shanahan's a guy we know actually will maximize the talent of the guys on his team.
Agreed. Yeah, I think year one, it would be a little more tenuous because of that. You have the other mouths to feed there and specifically at that thing. But 49ers, they play 13 personnel too. And, you're mentioning Juszczyk there. They had Warren. You're going to see some more of that as well. But yeah, that would probably be the one that year one would be a little bit down, but long term, obviously, it'd be wheels up.
For sure.
Obviously, again, Warren on all 32 NFL teams would make those offenses better in real life, but always tough in fantasy land. God, could you guys imagine the immediate articles? Oh, yeah, 49ers, they're just doing, Gronk and he who should not be named in 2025 here with Kittle and Tyler Warren. So one of these things, again, we'll see what happens. But yeah, do wonder, again, just 2025 specifically, these landing spots could rear their ugly heads a bit more than we're anticipating. Certainly could be a case for tight ends 3 through 5, though, in Thor's ranks. And Thor, we're going to start things off with Mr. Mason Taylor. This man has those bloodlines that back in the old, Madden superstar modes where you just be trying to line up the right family. This guy is, again, just killing it. His dad is Jason Taylor. His uncle is Zach Thomas. Doesn't even turn 21 until May at this point. So Thor, with Mason Taylor, he's your 55th 55th player overall. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah actually had him as high as 32nd. So do you think there's honestly a chance for Taylor maybe to even sneak into the back half of round one?
It would surprise me. He's in play just because it fits everything that the NFL wants. You mentioned the bloodlines. He also has the perfect frame, hair over 6'5", 251, 90th percentile size adjusted athlete. And he's another one of the guys that can play inline. He's going to be your inline guy. The first round, though, that would be a reach. There are some limitations in Taylor's game. I like him enough. But we haven't seen him win downfield in college yet. He was really good with the timing concepts, out play action at LSU, like a watchmaker like that. Get to the right spot, do your chip, get to the right spot on the field, foot in the dirt, and then turn around. You're right on time with Nussmeier getting out there, would hit him on the hands. It was station to station. We didn't see a lot of yak stuff out of him, too. And that was sort of the surprising or disappointing aspect of Taylor's. You get into the numbers there, is you're getting a lot of touches within 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. That should have facilitated some yak, and it really didn't. And again, LSU's offense didn't use him down the field. I will say in Taylor's defense, that was one thing I was specifically zeroing in on in Mobile, was let's see if this kid can win downfield in the one-on-ones. And he did make some plays down there. So, some of the times with the college systems, you're using a specific way. We don't get to see the other stuff. Doesn't mean necessarily you can't do it. It's just a little bit of a black box. But for those reasons, I think that this is a cap ceiling guy who's probably going to be a starter for a long time. But as far as fantasy, I don't see the dynamite potential there. I think this is like a solid starter guy. Certainly would not use a first round pick on him. I think it's a guy that makes a lot of sense in the second round of the NFL draft. But that's how I see him. I like him more as a real life player than I do a fantasy asset.
Yeah, the supermodel 100% agrees with Thor on this one. So I just went ahead, Ian, before the show and plugged in what would happen if we move Mason Taylor to pick 28, right? Because the rumor is kind of, hey, it could be late, round one. So I threw pick 28 towards the end of the round, and that would move him from a 75 overall in the supermodel to a 78. But with that, his non-draft capital version would rank 13 spots lower, meaning he would be a reach, and it's lining up with what Thor's saying. The supermodel actually thinks that this should be a guy that should be a round 2 pick. And the supermodel, just to kind of clarify, without draft capital has been really good. It's got a 0.71 correlation to future fantasy production over the first 3 years of a tight end's career in the NFL, which is the strongest of all three versions of the model: running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Slightly better than running back, which is at a 0.70. So feel pretty confident. If he did go in round one, and this kind of goes back to what Thor was talking about, some of the potential issues with him as a receiver, only 41st percentile in adjusted career receiving yards per team pass attempt, which adjusts for the good teammates that he's played with, adjusts for the schedule, his age, all those different things. That would be the worst production rating, which is a 72 in the supermodel, going back to 2018 for any round one tight end. So he would just really be a player that would look out of place as a round one prospect. Obviously, if he goes there, a team's investing more, they're going to give him more opportunities. It's going to matter, and he's going to move up in the model. It would put him one spot above Harold Fannin Jr., who sits at a 77 right now in the supermodel. But I'm with Thor. I think Mason Taylor, best fit. I've still got his expected draft capital at a 45. That's still kind of where it's hanging today over at Mock Draft Center, or at an NFL Mock Draft Database. So haven't moved him up higher than that in the actual model, but I did test it out, and he would obviously move up right around Harold Fannin Jr. if he got that draft capital.
And putting some numbers to what we're talking about, around 70% of Taylor's catches over his entire career came within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Last year, when he got his most opportunities, he only broke 4 tackles, 4.6 yards after catch last year. So it's like, if you're not winning down the field, and then you're good at the short and intermediate stuff, but you're not breaking tackles and you don't have anything interesting going with yak, that's where I find it hard to believe he is going to be a premier fantasy asset ever.
Thor's comp, Hunter Henry, also a round 2 guy for the San Diego Superchargers back in the day. So not saying it couldn't work out. Again, does have the nice build, athleticism, youthful profile, and the bloodlines, as we mentioned, but certainly not a slam dunk like our top 2 prospects. Similar sentiment, I'm sure, for Thor's tight end for it is Oregon's own Terrance Ferguson. Again, big guy here, 6'5", 247 pounds. His relative athletic score is a top 100 mark. Also, just turned 22 in February. So seems like he's checking a lot of boxes, Thor, albeit maybe doesn't have that, 1 or 2 elite traits that you'd like to see out of a true, top 50 option.
Yeah, he's just good all the way around the board. And I think it's, the lack of being elite at one of those different things. I think that's why he gets a little bit nitpicked, and he doesn't have a father and an uncle that are Hall of Famers. So, I mean, that's why is Mason Taylor talked about in more, a flattering light than Terrance Ferguson? I think that has a lot to do with it. Terrance Ferguson, 6'5.5", 247, plays a little bit over 250, 93rd percentile athlete, really opened eyes with his athletic profile in Indianapolis. He was the best testing tight end that we had there. Guy who has played a ton of inline, played a ton of snaps, period, over 2,000 snaps. He'd been starting since he was a freshman at Oregon. So you have the experience there, played inline, played in the slot, could certainly handle inline at the next level. Not an elite blocker, but certainly, if nothing else, a get you by guy there. And a guy who doesn't drop the ball as a receiver. You look at it was a 5.0% drop rate over 183 career targets. So I think this guy, I would, for the price point they're going to go over the weekend at the NFL draft, I would rather have Ferguson than Mason Taylor. I think in actuality, in terms of the utility of the NFL, those guys are very close, but I believe there's going to be a bit of a gap between them.
Yeah, the supermodel also says that, because I mean, right now I've got pick 96 as the estimation for Terrance Ferguson, and you're looking at where he comes in the supermodel versus Mason Taylor, who's expected to be like a early to mid round 2 pick. Ferguson's also the guy that has a lot more to gain, as somehow he does just go a little bit higher, and a team does believe in him. I will say, if you look at his production rating, it's a 73. So essentially it's right there with Mason Taylor, which is a 72. And that's a big component whenever you're trying to think about future fantasy productions. So never was a dominant player, but when he did get his opportunities, he was really good. His career targeted quarterback rating, Ian, was a 121.6, which is 77th percentile. You heard Thor talk about what an athlete this guy. You also talked about the RAS score when you introduced him. So career yak of 7, right? Despite being that lower ADOT guy. Whereas what Thor was talking about earlier, whenever we go back and talk about Mason Taylor, which is funny, did they just change the first letter? Mason, Jason, Taylor? Anyway, whenever you look at what Terrance Ferguson did with the ball in his hands, even though he wasn't attacking downfield that much, he was just a better player after the catch versus what we saw from Mason Taylor. So again, not a guy that's got a super high hit rate if we look back historically for guys that are in his range in the supermodel, but we'll see where he ultimately goes in the NFL draft. And obviously I'll be updating those live as we go. So for those of you that are subscribed to Fantasy Live Premium, the supermodel tables will all be updating as we get the live draft capital.
Really big news, by the way, regarding Jason and Mason Taylor. The other kids, unfortunately, are not following the same thing. We have Isaiah and Zoe. It would have been really cool, again, if we were going all the way in.
Hey,
George
Zoe.
Foreman asking all of it. Yeah, there you go, Dwain. So, again, all due respect to Mr. Ferguson. But, guys, I'm ready to talk about our tight end 5 here. Get the boxing gloves on, because I want to hear some disagreements, and that is accordingly bringing in Bowling Green tight end Harold Fannin Jr., Thor's 71st player overall, getting the Isaiah likely comp. But, Thor, I'm going to ask you to sound the sideline for a second, because, Dwain, tight end 5, your boy, for Thor, does this not enrage you, Dwain?
Well, and I think we got to let Thor defend himself, because he's also looking at this from an NFL prospect standpoint, right? So a player that's going to come in and do all the things the NFL team wants to do, we're gearing the model to really care about what we want as fantasy players. And we want yards, we want touchdowns, we want freaking fantasy points. And when you look at Harold Fannin Jr., it's just really no comparison. I'm guessing Thor will probably go along with that. We'll see what he says. But he's got the best production rating ever in the model, topping what we had from Brock Bowers. He grades out at a 100. His adjusted career receiving yards per team pass attempt is 99.9th percentile. That's the best that we've got in the model. If you look at career targeted quarterback rating, so when he had his opportunities, 79th percentile. So we really don't have historically other comps checking those two boxes in such a big way. Now, I know the concerns really are about what can he do as a blocker? Is he going to have to line up in the slot all the time? Ian, you and I have talked about that. I think it gets a little blown out of proportion. He's 241. The average first round NFL draft pick since 2018 has been 247 to 248 pounds. Yeah, he's a little under that. Then people are like, well, he didn't line up in line enough. Well, 43% of his snaps came in line. You didn't hear people complaining about Brock Bowers last year, who only did that 36% of his time in his career. And oh, by the way, Tyler Warren this year, 42%, Colston Loveland, 40%. So he's in the same range as those guys. I get it. He's not lining up and blocking like Abdul Carter or something, expected to win that matchup. But when we historically look at these pass catching tight ends, and they are the guys that teams are typically taking in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, like these other guys, Sam Laporta is another one. Like they've all had this kind of hole in their game. And so I'm not saying it's not an issue for Harold Fannin Jr., but I do feel like some analysts, and we'll see if Thor's one of them, like are overrating that. Because really NFL teams, like they would love for them to have it, but those sort of things have not held back those players. They have gone on to be really good NFL players from a standpoint of being pass catchers. Trey McBride's another name that fits in this same group. So yeah, I absolutely love Harold Fannin Jr. I do think that like if one of these guys is going to completely smash, that you're going to get in like round 2 or round 3 of your dynasty rookie drafts, like Harold Fannin is the name. He's the one I want to be taking over and over and over. It might be a strikeout, but I feel like the ceiling is just so astronomically high. So Thor, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, you hit on it as far as I go. I'm ranking the guys from a perspective of like, set NFL draft big board utility to the NFL, value to the NFL, which is different, of course, than fantasy utility. If I was ranking these like dynasty, Fannin for sure would be my tight end 3. Right. Like, I mean, and I think he certainly has the best shot to finish like end of the day at the career. You look back as a top 2 guy. If there was any other guy that I would point to that would have a shot for that, it would certainly be Fannin. As a receiver, super skilled. The last 2 years, you put them together, 96 percentile PFF separation rate. And this is a kid who was being double teamed all the time in the MAC, right? I mean, he gets nitpicked for that without people giving the context. Those crappy, admittedly, MAC opponents knew what Bowling Green's offense was. It was get the ball to Harold. They double teamed him all the time. And Harold Fannin was breaking that and still making plays. 93rd percentile yards after the catch per reception over the last 2 years. He had a lower ADOT. That was 9th percentile over the ocean of data there. However, this is a guy that can win down the field. He did it against the better competition as well. Last year, Harold Fannin in September smoked both Penn State and Texas A&M. Made a couple plays down the field there as well. It's not just a pure manufactured touch guy. You see this guy making tracking the ball, catching it over his shoulder, extending for the ball down the field, and the separation thing that goes at all levels of the field. So you can get creative with this guy. You're going to move him all around the formation. He is going to pull your slot receiver out the field. And this is why this guy needs to go to a predominantly 12 personnel offense where they already have their inline blocker dude. And then you just move Fannin all over the place. He's your chess piece. Before the snap, you have someone motion. That's going to be Harold Fannin. You're going to line him up all over the place. Try to get mismatches. He will gain separation, especially isolated in a bad matchup for the defense, and he doesn't drop the ball. Great hands with Harold Fannin. And by the way, he gets a little bit too dinged for the blocking thing where the other prospects don't. It's very simple with Harold Fannin. You put him in space or you put him as a lead blocker, he's good as a blocker. If you put him in a matchup where he is not physically, someone can't trump card him, he's going to win it. He gives effort as a blocker. It's just putting him in line, he will get ragged out by the power ends in the NFL, right? So that's why you can't do that. But that's not to say he doesn't give effort and there's no utility as a blocker. You just have to keep him within what he can do. Don't stretch him outside of his means. But as a receiver, Harold Fannin's going to help any NFL team's passing game.
I've talked about this with the blocking, but again, it's one of those things where shout out to, again, the film grinders and PFF for trying to give their grades. But when we don't have a super reliable, quantifiable way of grading these, it becomes this binary. You either have it and you're a great blocker or you don't. And all of a sudden you're a 0 out of 10. When in reality, Fannin, probably somewhere in the middle. So guys, I feel like I'm looking at that kind of meme where you have the graph and you have the 3 heads. You have the guy crying in the middle going, well, look at the inline percentage, the weight, the, competition concerns. You have the enlightened genius on the right going, it's a tight end that just had, 1,500 yards. And then the idiot on the left going, it's a tight end that just had 1,500 yards. I mean, Dwain, we don't see this production. Maybe we should just freaking follow it.
That's what I would do. And if I were an NFL GM, I would take him as the 3rd tight end off the board because you're trying to swing for something that could really differentiate your team. And what if he does develop into someone that can play more inline than we think? Or like Thor talked about earlier, I think Tyler Warren, he needs to land somewhere that wants to scheme him up touches. So maybe Harold Fannin does need to land somewhere that wants to play him, inside, from the slot. But give me Harold Fannin Jr. playing from the slot in Jacksonville. You got Brian Thomas Jr. handling everything downfield, intermediate. You really put like Harold Fannin Jr. into that Chris Godwin kind of role. You let him play some snaps from inside, but you shift him into the slot for a lot of that. Fine, let Brenton Strange do some of the dirty work. You can get him on the field in 12 personnel. The real key though, man, and this is what I want to ask Thor. Do we see Harold Fannin being able to develop into a player that can be on the field 80% of the time in passing plays? And it's just really important. Historically, like if you can't get to that number, it's hard to be an elite fantasy tight end. You might be able to do it at 70% if you're in like a pass-heavy offense with a really good quarterback. But for the most part, we want to get a guy to around that 80%. And I do believe that's the big question people have. And I think it's still a TBD. But Thor, I'm wondering if you've got a stronger opinion on that. It's like, nah, never going to happen kind of thing.
No, I absolutely think it's in play. It's all context dependent. If he finds that team where you have the inline guy and then you just let Harold do his thing. But with that team, yes, absolutely. Right. I mean, if you're willing to pull the slot receiver out the field, and I think Harold justifies it because you have that versatility moving around. You do different stuff with him, get on the ball. And again, a guy that can win at the third level of the field as well, in addition to all the yak machinations after the touches within 6 yards of the line of scrimmage. But I absolutely think he could.
Hey,
There's
let me ask you this.
teams. Yeah.
Can he be your inline tight end in 11 personnel? Because we do see that a ton with NFL teams. They're going to pass more often out of 11 personnel than they're going to run, unless you're like Sean McVay and you're really good at mixing it up. And that is where we've seen guys like Mike Gesicki get on the field and not even have to play as the slot, actually get to play as the inline tight end. And I think Gesicki is probably like, that's the low end version of, obviously no team wants Gesicki on the field as a blocker, but the Bengals used him last year in 11 personnel. Because the issue with 12 personnel is like the teams that use 12 personnel the most in the league today, it's like 30%. It's not very much. We don't get the Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski thing like we got that year from a few years from the Patriots. That's kind of like a major outlier scenario. So that's my question is if you know you're in mainly a passing set, you're going to run some from it, but could Harold Fannin be the inline tight end out of 11 personnel on a pass heavy team?
I wouldn't see him as a traditional version of that. Situationally, you could. He's just going to be a speed bump to those power edges, but he'll give you effort.
But for the most part, they're not asking those guys to block in those scenarios, right? Because they're not running that much out of that personnel. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and on passing concepts, of course, you're going to be sending him out, right? I mean, that's the reason that you're drafting him. And as far as the blocker, the thing that I prefer with him with that is in the backfield in space, where as the lead blocker, and then if he's in the slot, that's where he cleans up the nickels really well. So in some of them, which matters in some of the games, right? Like you have nickels that are actually good in run defense, erasing them from the play. There is actually a value to that, and there's some coaches that think there's a big value to that. So like that's the stuff that he's good at. I
think he could work in like split zone as the guy coming down from the other side, that kind of thing. You just don't want him like in a one-on-one with like Abdul Carter.
Yeah, and over the whole season, right? Like you could play and play out, and you're moving them all around situationally, sure. But yeah, you wouldn't want to strand them there because you're also going to get him beat up there. But that's not to say that I don't think he is headed for an NFL career where he's not a heavy passing game contributor for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. That's what I think we're headed for. I love Harold Fannin as the receiver guy, as I know that you do as well. And we can figure out the rest of it. But between the slot stuff and then moving him around, I think he's a value add to a creative play caller, right? And the Jacksonville, I love that shout out. That's perfect. They need multiple receivers and or a tight end there as well. And Fannin, you're existing between those two sort of polarities. That would be perfect for Jacksonville. You could cross one of those off right there.
I want to find out how much Thor really likes Fannin. Let's say a team picking at the end of round 3. They do have a creative play caller. They have a need a slot receiver. They just lost their team's self-pronounced best number 3 tight end in the league in free agency. Thor, what if your Minnesota Vikings take TJ Hawkinson's heir apparent at the end of round 3? How would you be feeling?
I would love it. Yeah, I think in that scenario, because O'Connell is so creative, to your point. And situationally, you can move Hawkinson, of course, can play inline, right? He does the bigger slot thing, especially when you have Josh Oliver out there. But you can work Fannin in initially. This wouldn't be the best for Fannin's production year 1, but it's one of those, again, where long-term, that would get really interesting. Because O'Connell, the stuff of shifting them all over the place, who's the guy we're going to pick pick on defense, right? I mean, those guys are all film junkies. They're going to find who's the dude we're picking on, and then you're moving Fannin around to get him isolated on that dude. So, yeah, I think that would be a really good fit. And I can tell you guys this, the Vikings are going to select a tight end this weekend, 100%. They have tipped this off. Neon flashing lights. Kwesi in his last press conference said everything but exactly that sentence. He just danced, but everything but we're going to be drafting a tight end. They didn't bring any in. Very short on depth there. And then Oliver's going to be a free agent after this year. Hawkinson, you're not going to have him forever. Could it be Harold Fannin? We'll see.
Plus this year, man, just bench Jalen Naylor and Rondell Moore, Thor. I mean, just let him play slot right away.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not like Jalen Naylor has to have snaps.
1,000%. Yeah, I'm with you.
Even Hawkinson's contract, obviously really good football player. Maybe they just want to keep him. But starting next year, guys, if they do want to do the post-June 1st cut, they would save over $16 million and only have about $5 million in dead cap. So it's a reality, as we often see with those NFL contracts. But Thor, again, not necessarily going to be, in play for the Vikings. They're actually only picking at the 24th overall pick and then 97th overall pick before round 5. So maybe they actually have to go look a little bit deeper. And accordingly, you do have a sleeper who you want to be talking about. None other than Nebraska tight end Thomas Fidone, I believe. Your tight end 721st player overall, someone you actually comped to Buffalo Bills tight end Dawson Knox.
Yeah, if NFL teams miss out on the consensus top 6, I'm talking through, depending on what board you're looking at, but on my board, it's Arroyo. I got him lower than other folks. Other people, Fannin, or whatever. Some people, Ferguson. But however it goes, after that sure thing top 6 or that consensus top 6, Fidone's the guy that I'd be targeting there. He is the guy. He's the one dude in this class outside that top 6 that you can point at and be like, if he hits, this is a long-term starter and maybe even a good one. You look at the RAS system. I love the RAS scores, and I also love looking at the closest comparables. RAS system goes back to the mid-1980s. It's 40 years of data of every player who was tested. It's not just went to the combine, certainly not just played in the NFL. Anyone that went through a pre-draft process. Over that entire ocean of data, the tight end that Thomas Fidone most closest resembled from frame and athleticism, TJ Hawkinson will stay close to me. TJ Hawkinson and Fidone, closest athletic comparison. Now, Fidone, he came in, he was the number 1 tight end recruit in his class coming out of high school. He tore an ACL prior in camp leading up to his freshman season, wiped that one out. Comes back as a sophomore, tears the other ACL in the other knee before that season. So his first 2 seasons get wiped out. Then he worked in Matt Rule's first team 2 years ago with Nebraska. Situational. He got more on his plate this past season, but Fidone is a guy that we know can play inline. He moves around well enough. You can toss him out situationally in the slot as well. The athletic profile absolutely plays. Speaking to the thing, the TJ Hawkinson comp, it's over a 90th percentile athlete. Fidone's a guy that we know can play on inline. He has good technique as a blocker there. Not a dominant one, but certainly, if nothing else, it gets you by one. I think that's a sleeper in this tight end class. If he hits, again, that's a long-term start in the NFL.
Maybe a diamond in the rough and someone who really can't operate across all 3 downs. Lesser extent with that, latter point being true for your favorite blocking tight end, that being Georgia Tech tight end Jackson Halls, someone he comped to AJ Barner, who, look, AJ Barner, I'm sure he's a perfectly good person, Thor, but the guy hasn't helped make my, post-Thanksgiving Saturdays very nice over the years with his work in Michigan. And then last year, he also helped prevent Noah Fant from breaking out in Seattle. So again, maybe someone who you're not necessarily expecting to go be the centerpiece of a passing game. But as we found out with guys like Barner, someone like Jackson Halls, man, don't underestimate his ability to just make a real life offense better.
That's right. This guy is going to be a much better NFL player than he is a fantasy player, but you're going to see him picked higher, I think, than people expect. Just like AJ Barner last year. Look at every industry board last year. The guy you're talking to had AJ Barner the highest, and he went right around where I ranked him. These players are valued to the NFL, particularly the ones that run this specific kind of offense. Jackson Haas is a 12 personnel guy, and going back to the AJ Barner thing, AJ Barner, the 12 personnel offense, 2023 Michigan title team. I'm sorry to bring it up, Ian, but AJ Barner was the inline guy, and then of course Colston Loveland was your big slot, and you move them all around, different stuff like that. Jackson Haas, he's going to be a similar thing in the NFL. You mentioned with Seattle, Barner, and then then Fant, and then we'll see if Fannin maybe or maybe someone else they get it this year. But Jackson Hall is going to go to a different team. He's going to take over as the inline guy and just a crushing blocker. He's not going to do much for you in the passing game outside of the checkdowns. He's going to be a tertiary option at best on passing concepts, but the best run blocker in this class, tight end position, bar none.
Finally, Thor, you do have a bust at the position group that you wanted to talk about, which I actually, appreciate, because in the age of just NFL draft analysis, it seems like everybody loves everybody, but we got to take a stance sometimes and not assume that we're talking about strictly future Hall of Famers every single pick down the board. So talk about Texas tight end Gunnar Helm and maybe some concerns that, people should be having for him.
Yeah, we've been too nice this episode, so let's get out the cold water and toss it on a prospect. Gunnar Helm is overblown. He was crazy overblown coming into the process. Now it's maybe gotten slightly more realistic, but when I was saying the top 6 consensus tight ends, I think a lot of people see it as consensus top 7 because they include Gunnar Helm in it. Gunnar Helm further down my board, I have him at 10. Maybe that even is slightly generous in my actual way of seeing it. Gunnar Helm stuck behind Jatavian Sanders the beginning part of his career at Texas. He's a late breakout guy, but the breakout coming last year, it was playing for arguably the best play caller in college football for the tight end position, Steve Sarkisian. He is awesome at scheming those guys into open patches of grass where it's just them and one other dude. He did a very good job. Sarkisian, you look back at 2023 tape of Jatavian Sanders, watch how many clear out concepts they gave for him, where all the quarterback had to do is hit him on the hands coming across the middle, Jatavian Sanders, and then there was a whole bunch of space in front of him, so that's where some of that yak yardage went up. It was taking over for Jatavian Sanders that Gunnar Helm did last year with a lot of manufactured looks. That's why his numbers were as good as they were. And then they had a quarterback in Quinn Ewers that can't throw down the field. That we'll throw some cold water on him. So there was a lot of intermediate throws short intermediate to Helm, and then also to the running backs. But Gunnar Helm, to me, this seems like a quadruple A player. It's an inline guy who is not a good blocker. And as far as a receiver, there are big-time limitations. There are big-time limitations on the athletic profile. 6'5", 240 pounds, 42nd percentile size-adjusted athlete. Gunnar Helm is the guy to avoid in your fantasy drafts.
Just as you were describing him, Thor, I was taken back to that Ohio State-Texas game when Gunnar Helm, tight end leak, goes across the middle of the field. No one picks him up, catches a wide open pass, and actually had a nice stiff arm on Caleb Downs. Probably shouldn't have been called for taunting after that. So good play there. But yes, Sark certainly did have a way of making his tight ends and even running backs as well, Mr. Blue Nose, awfully wide open in the passing game. So great stuff, Thor. Again, everyone can check out your Thor 500 and really just all of your position ranks because, it turns out you watch that much film. You got a lot to say. So I invite you guys to check out all that over at fantasylife.com. More draft day rumors though ahead for us on the Fantasy Life show right after a quick word to our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Gotta love draft week rumors. Are they just smoke? Are they actually something's going to happen? We need to try to figure that out before Thursday. And accordingly, we are rating some of the rumors that, again, are hitting us heavy here on this lovely Monday afternoon. So, fellas, starting things off with a potential, first round quarterbacks, perhaps Louisville's own Tyler Show, and also Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord getting some love, and they're generally just viewed higher by NFL teams than draft analysts. So, more so first round love for Tyler Show. Kyle McCord quotes actually coming from Jordan Schultz, who was just saying that he is generally viewed higher. But Thor, do you think there could be some truth to the idea that Show or McCord could sneak into the back part of round one?
That would be egregious if a team did that. Shuck, you get all the late hype. I don't really get it. I'll toss some more cold water on this one. He's the most overhyped quarterback in this class. He didn't break out till his 7th season. He had 3 straight season-ending injuries at Texas Tech. Oregon told him to get out of there. They benched him for Anthony Brown. After he had had a couple of apprentice years under Justin Herbert, they gave him 3 games. Then they wanted him out so they could start Brown. Was a bust at Texas Tech. Then you break out your 7th year for one of the best quarterbacks quarterback whisperers that we have in college football and Jeff Brom, you know, you can sort of miss me with that. That's a guy that struggles under duress. I know he's a big guy who's a good athlete. It's the reason he was a high recruit, and he can do some cool stuff with his arm angles and stuff. You know, people they're slobbering because he can throw sidearm. Okay, a lot of people can throw sidearm. I prefer the guys that are good under duress and can get off an accurate dime, you know, while they're under duress. That's not shock. So that's a day 3 guy for me. I do think the NFL is going to pick him higher, but first round, that would be egregious. I like
any thoughts on Shuck or
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Thor, and like, you know, this is just I don't have a supermodel for the quarterbacks, so I obviously look across and I look at what Thor's saying, I look at what Matt Waldman's saying, I read what Benjamin Solak's right. I try to get the lay of the land from the people that are scouting this stuff. So yeah, I think that would be pretty egregious if he snuck into the end of round 1. That would feel more like a desperation sort of move versus an actual savvy NFL move. I mean, 25.6 years old when the NFL season starts next year. Right now in mock drafts going pick 67, so more of a round 3 pick. That feels a lot. That feels more realistic, right? Somebody you potentially say, okay, we'll draft him. We'll see what happens. You know, Waldman graded him out of it at a 76.3 Ian, which equals a contributor, also AKA a starter in a limited role. But if you ask him to do too much more than what he's good at already, probably going to struggle in your offense. So man, that just does not feel like a late round 1 play to me. But am I buying the rumor? Like, I could see it happen just because the NFL does this sort of thing with quarterbacks. Like, somebody falls in love and it only takes 1 or 2 teams, and they get worried that maybe one of them is going to go at the top of round 2 the next day when you get all the jostling and people trading, you know, to move up into the top of round 2. If a team that really does like him, like, gets that worried, I could see it happening. So I could buy the rumor, see it happening. Do I think it would be a good move? No, I can't find anything that says that this would be a good move.
Maybe Seattle uses one of those second-round picks on Shuck and just get some, veteran leadership in that quarterback room to help out with Sam Darnold.
Veteran leadership.
We'll see what happens there.
Play with Jawan Johnson at Oregon. Jawan Johnson's going into his second NFL contract as a tight end, or maybe third. And this guy is just now coming into the league. He's like, when I just had to laugh a second ago when Thor said 7 years. Like, that's insane.
It is ridiculous. Thor, someone who did not need 7 years in college, though, is Kyle McCord, someone who isn't exactly loved in Columbus these days, whether that's really his fault or not. I did enjoy the, Gruden's QB camp with McCord, breaking down some of those, ill-timed interceptions at Michigan that, if you wanted to maybe point the finger a bit more at Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe wouldn't even be wrong there. But thoughts on McCord, Thor, because, yes, he did benefit from playing at a loaded Ohio State program, but let's face it, Fleming banged up Emeka Ibuka, maybe wasn't quite as rich of a wide receiver room as we're used to seeing. And then, the guy leads all college football, or at least, Power 5 conferences and big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays. I mean, there's some sort of excitement here going on with McCord.
Yeah, in this bad quarterback class, Kyle McCord is the sleeper. Not these other guys the media forwards as sleepers. If they go as high as the media is claiming that they're going to go, some of these names that we've tossed out, they would be egregious reaches. Kyle McCord actually is a sleeper. It's a guy who almost, I believe he is going to go early on day 3, and he actually has a tool set where he could potentially develop into an NFL starter. There's similarities there as far as the starter kit that you're getting with him to Chad Henne and Kirk Cousins. Those are the 2 guys I saw the most similarities with. Not a great athlete, Kyle McCord, as you know, Ian, and he doesn't have the howitzer arm, but he sees the field well. He has gumption, he attacks, and at Syracuse, he was sort of, it sort of goes against the way that you would think. But at Ohio State, he had to go across the progressions. You had to run the offense as written for you. At Syracuse, you're not playing with as good a talent, but Kyle McCord was given the freedom and emboldened to when you see the coverage look and you want to attack, you attack. And he did it quick. You mentioned that some of the turnover-worthy play rate elevated. A lot of that came from one isolated game, though. You look outside the Pittsburgh game for Kyle McCord and Syracuse last year, McCord was dang near perfect outside of that one game. And then he had one of the more waking nightmare games that you'll ever see against Pittsburgh. 3 first-half pick sixes. It was 5 interceptions overall. So the worst game you're ever going to see. But again, outside of that, the other 12 games, Kyle McCord was fabulous last year, finished number 3 PFF and wins above replacement, all players in the FBS. I like Kyle McCord.
My working comp for him is Leroy Jenkins. Maybe a bit ill-advised with decision making, but got to respect someone, willing to go ahead and make some of those choices in the first place. But fellas, a few more draft day rumors before we get out of here. Dwain, we'll go to you as our resident Cowboys fan. Myself, sadly, also. But the Cowboys apparently could look to be trading their first round pick, more so down the board. Talking to Stephen Jones, he was saying I could see a situation where we would move down. Did add the caveat that they've gotten, future Hall of Famers like DeMarcus Ware, Micah Parsons, and Zach Martin around that point anyway. But for you, Dwain, Cowboys sitting there at pick 12. Let's say that there is an Ashton Jeanty or a Ted McMillan on the board. How would you like it if the Cowboys decide, let's get some more picks and move down?
I mean, I don't think Jeanty's making it there, and I think if he does, I don't think the Cowboys will trade down. But it just really depends on the haul. I would have a high asking price, more than what you would normally require to come up to 12 if Jeanty's there, and you've got these teams like the Broncos below you that could just get really excited about it and want to move up and grab Jeanty. So I wouldn't be completely against it. I will say this: the Cowboys trades lately have driven me nuts. But overall, if you look at their body of work over the last 6-7 years, as far as the drafts go, it's been pretty good. We had the 1 year with Mozzie Smith and Schoonmaker, which wasn't very good. But outside of that, most of the draft class, most of the draft classes have been pretty good. They've also been pretty solid in round one. We'll see what happens with last year's first round pick. Didn't necessarily pan out so far, but I would be okay with moving down, but I would want a big asking price if it's because Jeanty's on the board. If it's Ted McMillan that's sitting there, I don't think you're going to get quite as much from the team moving up, but I would still be okay as well. Also would be completely fine with them making both those picks, Ian, because it would be fun. I would love to see Ashton Jeanty as a Dallas Cowboy. But if you're talking just pure value of a position and where the Cowboys are today, I could see grabbing some extra draft capital, making more sense for, the guys with the silver helmets with the blue stars.
I remember in 2016, the entire lead up to the draft, I was going, just give us Jalen Ramsey at pick 4. Don't overthink this. Don't take this shiny Zeke toy. Just give us Ramsey. Draft day came around. I woke up and I said, my God, we better draft Ezekiel Elliott out here. So yes, you can talk about position value and all this, but sometimes getting that shiny running back is just simply a lot of fun. Thor, Dwain actually mentioned the Broncos being a team looking to perhaps trade up for Ashton Jeanty. And yes, we did actually get a report from ESPN's Adam Schefter saying the Broncos have made inquiries about moving up to round 1. For the life of me, man, I cannot think of a better landing spot in all of football for Jeanty than the Denver Broncos. But that said, Colston Loveland being a bit of a joker, we don't care about you that much anyway, Evan Ingram. Who do you think the Broncos and Sean Payton specifically might have an eye for in round 1, Thor?
It's Omari and Hampton. They know they can't get Ashton Jeanty. And the fear there is that Omari and Hampton's going to get popped before them. That's what they are exploring. They don't have the equity. It wouldn't make sense for them to go up as far as you could try to get for Gent, because you're going to have to get above your division mate. You'd have to trade up to 5. That becomes cost prohibitive for them. The actual target is Omari and Hampton. They love Omari and Hampton. So it's, you're monitoring that, where does Jeanty go? Does he go 6? A little bit lower, right? If Jeanty goes 6, that's where you're going to see some panic in Denver's war room, because
I
the
do
second
wonder
that Jeanty goes off the board, Hampton is on the clock. Yeah.
I think Hampton would
Denver,
be in play.
It is Hampton. That's what I'm saying. It's Hampton.
I think Hampton would be in play. Yeah, but man, Will Johnson at corner, they need cornerback help. You've got, that aggressive defense with Vance Joseph. You got Will Johnson sitting there. You got Jaden Barron from Texas. You've got edge players. They this is another team that really wants to win via pressure on defense. I get it with Hampton, but I feel like he would be a reach at that spot versus some of those other players Jalen Walker, Mike Green, Michael Williams, and sometimes, Sean Payton, tries to put out the smoke screen, or at least he says that he does, so he can take credit for it later. I feel like Hampton's the super popular name, but man, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they move. I'll give you the other sneaky one. What if it is Ted McMillan? That dude's Michael Thomas, Marquez Colston clone. The guy you can play from the outside, but you play him, more like the power slot from the Z. You let him do those things. So I agree with Thor. If you had to put a favorite on, it's probably Hampton. But man, there's a lot of things that the Broncos could use. They played really well, made the playoffs last year. But when you look at their roster, they've got more holes. They actually kind of they played above, I think where we would have thought they would have played last year. So kind of like the Giants a few years ago, except the fact that they've got a young quarterback that they like. So I think there's a lot of ways that they could go here. But Hampton's certainly the most popular name that we're hearing right now.
And look, I'm not advocating for even Hampton at the 20 slot. I certainly wouldn't be advocating for the trade up. I'm just passing along information in this case. On my board, Hampton's at the top of the second round. I do not have him as a first round prospect. I see Hampton as closer to the next line of guys, Caleb Johnson, the 2 Ohio State guys. Then I not even close to Ashton-Genty. I think it's a joke when people try to be like, oh, he's actually, there's a debate, him and Ashton-Genty. It's like, no, there is not a debate.
It's silly.
But yeah, Denver.
I just try to think back to like historically how many times these draft rumors, like they end up being right. There's a trade, but the name is wrong. Like the actual player that the team is targeting is like, whoa, we didn't see that. Like, so I'm just kind of, I'm with you, Thor. I know you're just passing along the info. I'm just throwing out the other name.
2018, when Peyton was with the Saints, they trade up to like 14. And it goes, oh my gosh, it's happening. We're going to see Lamar Jackson and Sean Payton. They take freaking Marcus Davenport. It's the most lame thing.
I know.
Ever. We almost had Lamar Jackson and Nola playing with Sean Payton, learning from Drew Brees. Alas, what could have been? I guess he's had a pretty cool career.
Sean Payton should have gone with the rumor mill on that one.
Right. Yeah. Come on, Sean. Just listen to everyone else for once. I guess he's been doing all right for himself overall. But guys, that is going to do it for us here at the Fantasy Life Show. We appreciate you tuning in and look forward to giving you guys all the goodness throughout this entire draft week. So for Dwain, for Thor, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.